السلام عليكم. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. It's nice to see all of you this wonderful morning. Alhamdulillah. As the MC mentioned, I had a very eventful morning. So yesterday I was in Toronto. I was teaching a course there. And then this morning I woke up very early, even before Fajr. So it was like a tahajjud trip. And then got to the airport, Toronto, and there was so much fog that you couldn't see even just a few meters in front of you. So what happened was the flights were being delayed and canceled. So eventually I actually took ground transportation from Toronto. So it's been, and I literally just, like he said, just pulled up and came straight here. Everybody goes like, they've already announced you. I'm like, I heard. They've already announced you. I heard. Everyone who saw me said that. But anyway, here I am. Alhamdulillah. So this is the thing. I'm describing to you guys about a journey that I was on. But there's actually a greater journey that every single person is on, whether you guys are coming from Toronto or from anywhere. We're all on a journey, a greater journey, and that is to meet our Creator. So we all started in the same place, and that was with our Creator, and we're all on a journey back to our Creator. There is this very profound statement, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. This statement literally means, indeed we all belong to God, and indeed we will all return to God. This is the spiritual journey that every single individual is on. Now, whatever people believe, even, non-Muslims cannot deny the fact that eventually this worldly life will come to an end, that no one can deny the certainty of death. That's something that it's something that whether you're an atheist or an agnostic or a Christian or a Jew, you can't deny the certainty that this life will come to an end. As believers, we know that the end of this life is not the end of us, and that this is a journey that continues. Now, how can we be successful in that journey? That's essentially the question. What is success in this journey? Well, the answer to that is actually given to us very clearly in the Quran, on the tongue of Ibrahim alayhi salam. There's this very beautiful extended supplication of Ibrahim alayhi salam, of Abraham. And he says in this dua, وَلَا تُخْسِنِي يَوْمَ يُبْعَثُونَ. Do not disgrace me on the day when everyone is brought back. يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. The day when nothing is going to benefit anyone from wealth or children. Now here, children was a symbol of power. So essentially, God is saying, Allah is saying that there's going to come a day when all these things, all this stuff that seem to matter in this life, right? It's the stuff we rank one another by, and that is wealth and power, and some semblance of power, some symbol of power. And here Allah uses children because that was a symbol of power in a lot of these societies. So, يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ. The day when neither wealth nor children will benefit anyone. So what will benefit us? What is success? إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. Except for the one who returns back to Allah with a heart that is sound, with a heart that is healthy. So now, we're being told that this is the only thing that's going to matter after this journey is over. Once this journey comes to an end, there's only going to be one thing that's going to make us successful. It's not going to matter what we wore in this life, or what we drove, or how much money we had, or how many likes on Facebook, right? It's not going to benefit us. But what is going to benefit us is the person who comes back to God with a heart that's sound. So now the question becomes, well, what is a heart that is sound? What is qalbun salim? What does that look like? And how do you get there? Well, first, what is it? I think one of the best definitions of qalbun salim is a heart in which there is no competitor with God within it. I'm going to repeat that. A heart, a qalb, and when we say qalb, we translate it as heart. We're not talking about the physical heart. It's not the physical heart. It's not about being in physical shape, obviously, but it is the spiritual heart. And I'll talk a little bit more about the purpose or the function of the spiritual heart. But the definition of qalbun salim that I'm going to put across is it's a heart, a qalb, a spiritual heart, where there's no competitor with God within it. And what does it mean to have a competitor with God? What are some things that compete with God? So to become a Muslim, what do you say? Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Now this is a very easy statement to say with the tongue, but the meaning is very heavy. This is the reason why Quraysh fought the Prophet ﷺ so much, because La ilaha illallah is a very heavy statement and has very heavy, like a lot comes out of it, which is very, very heavy, right? The meaning of it is very, very profound. So La ilaha illallah means that there is no ilah except for Allah. Now who's Allah? Allah is not a Muslim God. Allah is God of all people in all time. It's not like a special God that we worship, but it's just the Arabic word for God. So when you say La ilaha illallah, what you're essentially saying is that there is nothing that takes the position in my heart and in my life of an ilah except for God. Fair enough? Now I've translated everything except for the word ilah. And that's what I want to talk about. Because in this spiritual journey and in this quest to have qalbun salim, we have to understand what an ilah is. An ilah is not just something that you pray to. Because we're told in the Quran that there are people who take their hawa, their desires and their inclinations, their opinions as their ilah. Obviously nobody prays to their desires, right? We don't pray to our opinions and our inclinations. So there's some deeper meaning to the word ilah. What is an ilah? Essentially an ilah is what we put at the center of our existence. And every individual, whether they are an atheist or they are agnostic or they are Christian or they are Jewish or they are Muslim, every individual has something as an ilah. Because it's my center. It's my center. It's my center of gravity. It's the thing that dictates my life. It's the thing that I love most. It's the thing that I live for and I would die for. It's that thing that determines how I live, why I live. It's my center. And so even people who don't believe in God have an ilah, but they take other things as their ilah. Now, what are some of the things that people take as an ilah? Some people take their own selves. They take their own desires as an ilah. So what would that look like? It would look like anything I want, I take, regardless of the consequences, regardless of things like right and wrong, regardless of morality, regardless of who it hurts. If I want it, I take it. If I think it, I do it. This is a worship of the desires, right? And this is unfortunately the type of culture that is pushed on us. This is what advertisers sell, right? You know, Sprite, obey your thirst, right? Nike, just do it, right? Pepsi says, live for now. Do you understand the theme here? The theme here, because this is how they're going to get you to buy stuff, is to tell you to worship your desires. If you feel a craving, obey it, right? Because that's how they get you to spend on things you don't need, right? And so the idea here is it's a culture that is very much about the worship of the self. What you feel must be right, obey it. If it feels good, do it. You know what I'm saying? If you're born with a desire, obey it regardless of right and wrong. This is the type of culture that's being like literally shoved down our throats, that we're supposed to accept this. And if we say that we believe that things are morally wrong, these kinds of people are called various different types of names, right? You're called names because you're not being tolerant of a person's desire. But see, when you obey your desire regardless of right and wrong, if you obey your desire regardless of who it's going to hurt and who you're going to have to take from, then that's a worship of the desires. That's taking your desire as an ilah. There are people who take money as an ilah, where they are literally willing to do anything for money. Money's at the center, and whatever it takes, they will do it for money. There are people who take power as an ilah. If you study politics, if you study foreign policy, you find something very interesting. You find the level to which people and even nations go to for money and power. If it means bombing countries, if it means killing children, if it means occupying lands, that is a worship of money and power. That's taking money and power and worshiping it. That means that you've taken money and power and made it a god. You've made it a god. It's an idol of the heart. That's what an ilah is, an ilah. So when you say, La ilaha illallah, you're saying something very deep. You're saying that nothing in my life, not my money, not power, not status, not wealth, not my own desires, none of these things have the right to be at the center where only God should be. That only God should have that place in my life and in my heart of an ilah, where I revolve my life around God. And God is what I love most, and God is what I put my hope and trust and dependence in. God is what I fear and what I love. And so that is what Tawheed essentially is. Tawheed is not just saying La ilaha illallah on your tongue. Because a lot of people say La ilaha illallah on their tongues, but their real ilah is something else. But they actually worship money, or they worship status, or power, or image. And I'll tell you something else that a lot of us worship. And that is what other people think. What other people think. And now we have these platforms like social media in order to further this obsession with what other people think. Right now we have a gauge, we have likes, right? We have followers. And so now we have this platform to sort of live out this worship and this obsession of what others think. We do things because we're afraid of what people are going to say. We don't do some things because we're afraid of what other people are going to say. I've seen situations where women are in very abusive relationships, for example. And what's told to this woman or man is, you should just stay because what are people gonna say? That's a sickness, yeah? That is the essence of oppression, because what that person is doing is they're so obsessed, they're so worried about what people think that they're willing to oppress their own daughters. That's a sickness. And that's what happens when you take something other than God and you worship it. And this is one example, is this worship of what people think of me. And then we work very, very hard to put on certain image. We work very hard to put a certain image. An image of me, an image of my family, an image of my children, right? That's now what social media is for. And alhamdulillah, we got a filter for everything, right? If there's some flaw, right? If there's some flaw, just filter it, Photoshop it, and then put it out to the world. So now the world thinks that you're perfect, right? And that your marriage is perfect, and your relationship is perfect, and your children are perfect, right? Right? So this is the image we have to put out there, because we have this idea that first of all, we need to be perfect. And second of all, we need to show the world that we're perfect. It's very important what people think of us. These are all different things that oppress us. This is an actual oppression. You know, it's very interesting. There was this beautiful and profound statement. One of the companions who was coming to teach, he was coming into the town to teach the people about Islam at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. And he said it so beautifully. He said, I have come to free you. I have come to free you from the slavery to the slave and bring you to the slavery of the Lord of the slave. I've come to free you. That when you take God and put Him at the center, you're actually freeing yourself. You're freeing yourself from the slavery to all these other things. Because here's the secret no one ever really makes you realize, and that is that we are all slaves. Every single person is a slave. You may think, oh, but I don't believe in God. Well, you're a slave to something else. You're a slave to something. Everyone is a slave. But the question is, what do you choose to enslave yourself to? And many people have chosen to enslave themselves to other slaves. Whether it's people, or it's money, or it's power, or it's status, or it's what people think. But they have enslaved themselves to other slaves, to the creation. And so this man is saying, I've come to free you from this slavery to the slave and bring you to the slavery of the Lord of the slave. You know, even hijab is a symbol of this type of freedom. Because you know what? We either get dressed because, you know, people say like, you know, I wear what I want to wear. Okay, that's great. So this is again, it can be a worship of your own self, but most of the time, it's a worship of something called fashion, okay? Now, the thing about fashion is that, you know, it's the great God. It's the great God of fashion, right? In quotation marks. Why do I say that it's a God? It's something we worship. And the reason for that is, like, personally, I have witnessed very strange types of progression in what we wear and what we do. Okay, I'm going to just give you some examples. And it's all because fashion said so. And it's amazing how much things have changed over the last 5-7 years. Drastically changed, simply because fashion said so. I promise you that there are things that we wear today, especially the men, let's be honest. There are things that we wear today that we wouldn't be caught dead wearing if someone told us, put these tights on, call them pants, right? If you went up to a guy, okay, I'm just going to be real talk here, okay? If you went up to a guy 5 years ago, 6, 10 years ago, and you said, put on these tights, what would he say to you? Are you crazy? I'm going to put on tights. Okay. But now, everybody's wearing tights. Right? It's like everyone's Robin Hood all of a sudden. You know what I'm saying? They call them skinny jeans, but they're tights. Okay? But the point that I'm making here is somewhere along the line, because fashion said so, we hear and we obey, isn't it? Sami'na wa ata'na. This is worship. Okay? Worship is sama'na wa ata'na. We hear and we obey. So fashion says, so put this on, we put it on. Fashion said, do this, we do it. Fashion said, do this, we do it. And now the new thing is dudes doing their eyebrows. Can we be real over here? Okay? Fashion said it's cool. I can't believe this is the world we live in. But it is. Okay? Dudes are doing their eyebrows. It's interesting. A friend of mine, she was telling me that, you know, like that argument that you have with your mom when you're little, and she's like, you can't do your eyebrows, it's not allowed, right? And you're like, but mom, so-and-so does it. So it used to be so-and-so auntie does it. This girl actually said, but so-and-so uncle does it. This is the world we live in, all right? So my whole point that I'm making here is that we're doing some very strange things that we wouldn't ever have done if someone asked us to do it. Same person, 10 years ago. And the reason is that fashion is in a sense, there's a worship of fashion. Fashion says, do it, we do it, regardless of how immodest it is, how, you know, unmasculine it is, you get what I'm saying? And so the point here is, what we put at the center dictates how we live and what's most important to us. So when I come back to this concept of qalbun salim, the heart that is sound, it is a heart that doesn't have a competitor with God. Now, it doesn't mean you can't love things, all right? You can love your car, you can love your house, you can love your spouse, obviously your children, your parents. These are all things that are okay to love. This isn't shirk. But the problem is, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَتَّخِذُ مِن دُونِ اللَّهِ أَنْدَادًا يُحِبُّونَهُمْ كَحُبِّ اللَّهِ, that there are from among people those who take rivals with God. They love them as they should only love God. And that is the problem. It isn't about, we aren't a deen of go into the cave and you're not allowed to have stuff, right? This isn't the deen our deen is practical. Our deen is living in this dunya and having things. We had companions who were very wealthy, right? That you can have things, but the problem comes when, as Allah says, that there are people who take rivals with Allah, they love them as they should only love Allah. That these rivals become our wealth, sometimes our children, sometimes our spouses, sometimes power, sometimes status, etc. Sometimes fashion, right? We love them as we should only love Allah. And when you love something the most, the thing about love, there's this amazing thing about love, and that is that you become a slave to whatever you love most. That's how it works. That's human psychology. You become a slave to whatever you love most. And that is why people become slaves to money sometimes. And that is why people become slaves to status. And at any cost, they want to keep their status and their image. This is why we become slaves to these things, because whatever you love most becomes your master and you're its slave. We live in a society where there has become more and more obsession with appearances. All right? There's so much pressure, so much obsession with how you look, how thin you are, how, the certain tone of your skin. In many cultures, it's how light-skinned you are, etc. People are judged, especially women, are judged in this way. So, for example, in some cases, you have a woman and she's looking to get married, right? So, there's kind of like a grading system, right? And if she has sisters, for example, it'll be like they're graded based on, what are they graded on? Well, in a lot of cases, they're graded based on how light-skinned they are. Okay, so the lightest skinned, she has the highest grade. Yeah. Then after that, the darker skin. So the one who's lighter will have an easier time getting married. Okay. So this obsession, and of course we have different versions of this, right? The obsession with how thin you are, right? To the extent that people, it leads people to eating disorders and etc. The obsession with looks. And now it's become more and more intense because guess what? We have this thing called social media. We have an Instagram culture. And on Instagram, everyone looks perfect. It's called a filter, right? And then there's like these makeup tutorials, and somehow it's like magic because they make everyone look the same. Do you ever notice that? It's like every single person comes out of these makeup tutorials looking identical. They become twins. It's amazing. They look different before, and then they all look the same. At least to me, they look all the same. I don't know, you know what I'm saying? It's like, they all look the same. But this is the culture that we live in. It's an obsession with appearances. And then every time we open our phone, guess what? We're bombarded with it. We're bombarded with this person looking perfect, this person and their perfect life, and their perfect body, and their perfect fashion sense, and their perfect relationship, and their perfect children. It's all the time. So there's a couple issues, right? One is how it affects us. It affects our focus. It affects what we consider most important in life. See, if you're always being exposed to something, it starts to become, psychologically, it starts to become more and more important to you. You assume that it is more important. It's like, it'll stick in your mind, priming, and there's different types of theories about this. even agenda setting. If you hear about something a lot or you're exposed to something a lot, you actually start to think that it's more important. Okay? So when you're constantly being exposed to just how people look, how people dress, how people putting their makeup on, how the people, various hijab tutorials, etc. And that's it. And that's the majority of what you're exposed to. Guess what happens to you internally? What happens to you internally is that your focal point shifts. Your focal point shifts. Your focal point is no longer La ilaha illallah. You lose sight of your ultimate destination, right? We said that every single person is going to go back to God. And the only thing that's going to matter is whether or not they have a sound heart. But we completely lose sight of this and we get distracted. We lose sight of what matters. And that has to do with simply what we're exposed to. And the exposure just now is such an obsession with appearances. It's like everything is what they're wearing, what they're doing, what they're eating, for God's sakes. Why are we posting our burgers? Why? Like, why? I just don't understand. Like, they take pictures of their food. I don't get it. But it's like, that's our newsfeed. That's our newsfeed. I'm going to tell you guys a secret. There's this magic thing on Facebook called unfollow. And it's okay. And no one will know. You know, the thing is, you are what you eat. You know, you are what you eat. You become internally what you ingest, what you expose yourself to. Now, I'm not talking up here about haram and halal, folks. I'm not up here to talk about that. I'm talking from a psychological perspective. That when we are exposed only to material things, we become materialistic. It's as simple as that. When everything we look at, everything we read, everything we talk about, everything we're exposed to is dunya, 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 and more dunya, guess what? We become dunya focused. We become dunya obsessed. And that is a sickness. It is a sickness that actually poisons the heart. And when the heart has dunya filling it, it can't have Allah in the center. It can't. Because you've put something else there. You've taken something else and made it an ilah. And that thing is dunya. Whatever aspect of dunya it is. Whether it's appearances, or it's power, or it's money, or it's status, or it's what are other people gonna say? What are other people gonna think? This obsession. It becomes at the center. And that happens because that's what you expose yourself to. So a very practical thing that we can do is change our exposure. Simple as that. Something as small as changing your news feed. Because you know what, at the end of the day, we're on our phones a lot of the day. And some people are on social media more than others. But the reality is that we are constantly exposed to media. Whether it's billboards or TV or movies or social media, right? And so if we change something just very small, change what we're looking at and reading every single day, you will find that that changes you inside. So you change your news feed. And like I said, this unfollow button, it's really convenient. Because what you can do is, you can make your news feed so that it actually enriches you. Because the reality is, you're going to be on it anyways. You're going to be on it. And so if you can make it enriching, instead of just about burgers and hijab and makeup, okay, and fashion, and what's in fashion now, and what's, OMG, it's like constant, right? And then what else it does is it always, here's what else it does. This is also very important. It makes you feel more and more dissatisfied with your own life, okay? It makes you feel more and more dissatisfied with your own self, how you look, how your relationship is, how your car is, how your clothes are, how your body is. You will constantly feel dissatisfied. And this is what studies have shown. Psychological studies have shown that the more that someone uses social media, because of the way social media is being used, the more dissatisfied they are with their own life. Can I tell you why that is? It's because the life that you're seeing on social media is the photoshopped version. It's not real. Nobody puts their real, I woke up like this. No, you didn't, right? right? No one puts out the real version. They put the Photoshop filtered version. And I mean, we got every kind of filter now, thank the Lord, right? And so you're looking at someone else's Photoshop version and you're comparing it to your real version. Of course you're going to be dissatisfied. And that's what happens. And so it's actually having an effect on us psychologically. So if you can change what you expose yourself to, it will change you inside. Change your focus. Change your focus and you change. And the more you focus on things that matter, ultimately that will help you in your journey, in your spiritual journey back to God. We're all going there. We're all going there. The only question is, in what state will you be when you arrive? That's the only difference between one person to another. But everyone's going back to the same place. The only thing that differs is what state you will be when you arrive. So it's probably a good idea to invest, because this is the only thing that's going to matter in the end. Remember where I started. يَوْمَ لَا يَنْفَعُ مَالٌ وَلَا بَنُونَ إِلَّا مَنْ أَتَى اللَّهَ بِقَلْبٍ سَلِيمٍ. The day when nothing is going to benefit anyone. It isn't going to matter how awesome you could do your hijab tutorials or whatever it is. It's not going to matter how many followers you have. It's not going to matter what you looked like. It isn't going to matter. But what is going to matter is if you come back to God, to Allah, with a heart that's healthy, with a heart that's sound. So it's in our best interest to invest in that. And so if we can just change certain things about our lives that enrich us and help us in building that, then we will shift who we become. Lastly, I want to leave you with something that I try to leave all my audiences with. And that is a prescription. Because at the end of the day, we listen to lectures and then we go home. And the real change, the real transformation doesn't happen in the seat in a lecture hall. That's not where transformation happens. It's like if I were up here talking about fitness, I could talk to you about fitness for, till the sun sets, right? Is anyone going to get fit by sitting here listening about fitness? No. Got to go home and do something, right? For you to get fit. It's the same thing spiritually. It's just the same thing. And so I want to give you guys something that you can go home and do. And that is where transformation happens. It's by doing. So the three things, it's a 3-part prescription. The first is the salah. Here's the thing about salah, prayer. Prayer is oxygen. Prayer is oxygen. And it is nothing less than oxygen. A lot of people suffer. It's like they suffer, but they don't know why they're suffering. They don't really know why they're suffering. And the reason they're suffering is because their heart is deprived of spiritual oxygen. That is the reason they're suffering. If someone goes to a doctor and says, "Doctor, I'm suffering, I'm in pain, I have this, the doctor's going to make sure they're getting enough oxygen. Oh, are you breathing? Oh no, I don't do that anymore. I don't do that anymore. I'm too busy to breathe." Does anyone say that? Does anyone say, I'm studying for an exam, so I'll breathe next week? Does anyone say, I'm at work, so I'll breathe tonight? Does anyone say, I'm at the mall? It's a really great sale, so let me breathe later on. Nobody does that. Why? Because you're going to die if you don't breathe. It's as simple as that. It's a necessity for life. And prayer is like that. Salah is like that. This prescription of giving us the salah 5 times a day is literally the oxygen that keeps us alive. If you're not praying, you're not breathing. And there's no simpler way to put it. If you're not praying, you're not breathing. And the root of your suffering is that you're not breathing. Spiritually, you're not breathing. So the salah is the first thing we have to go back to. I mean, I can't, if I were a doctor and I was trying to tell you, okay, here's the cure. I can't talk about cure if you're not breathing, right? The basis is oxygen to keep you alive. Okay? The second prescription that I advise is this. So I truly believe that a lot of our suffering, we as a community and individually are suffering because there's something that we've neglected, that we were given, but we've neglected it. and that is the remembrance of God, the adhkar. So there are these supplications, right, that the Prophet ﷺ told us to do, and he used to do throughout his day. Like he went through his life. He didn't stop his life and just live in a cave. He went through life. He got married, he had children, he was a leader, he was a friend, he was a father. Okay? He was all these things, but he did it while he was remembering God. And he has set an example for us. The problem is we've neglected these things, and as a result, we are suffering. How can we, so I'll just give you like a simple prescription for this. There's an app that you can download on your phone called My Dua, MYDUAA, so double A at the end. It's just Fortress of a Muslim in a dua, in an app form. Okay, so what it is, it's a collection of the supplications of the Prophet, peace be upon him, and from the authentic supplications, from the hadith, from the sunnah, and from the Quran, that he used to say throughout his day. There is literally a supplication for everything you can imagine, right? You're leaving the house, there's a supplication. Coming back, there's a supplication. Eating, finishing eating, entering the bathroom, leaving the bathroom. Even before intimacy, there's a supplication. There's a supplication for travel. There's a supplication for everything. But I'm going to tell you this. There are a few of them you can't live without. I'm going to tell you what they are. The first is the morning supplications. These are the ones that you do after you pray Fajr. These are called Adhkar al-Sabah, the morning supplication. When you get this app, you open it up. On the side, there's like a little icon that has a sun and a moon. Click on that. When you open it, there's going to be a few of them. What people do sometimes, they're going to read it, all of them, once, and then never do it again. Because they're going to be overwhelmed. It took them an hour. I'm not going to spend it. You know what I'm saying? So I'm going to tell you right now a secret. There's this thing at the top. It's a little star. You click on the star, and then you make your own list. Now I'm going to tell you one very important spiritual principle that we're taught by the Prophet. God loves the deeds that are consistent, even if they're small. وَلَوْ أَقَلْ. And so just like in fitness, right? As long as you are consistent, you're going to see results. But if you do 100 sit-ups once and don't do it again, guess what? It doesn't work. Right? So you have to be consistent, even if it's small. So find out how many you can consistently do, star those, and after that just click on the star and you have your own list. After Fajr, so morning supplication. The second one you can't live without is evening supplications. Again, open your app, click on that, and read your evening supplications. And the third is before you sleep. Okay. Now what I'm giving you right now, by the way, is gold. And you don't have to take my word for it, just try it. It actually changes your entire psychology. It changes you emotionally. It makes you more calm. It helps you in your relationships. It helps you in your job. It literally will make your life difference between day and night easier. And I'm telling you, just do it and you see. Right? So this is the adhkar. And then there's little ones that you should just memorize. They're very short. Leaving the house. Dude, if you're protected until you come back, wouldn't you want to say this? It's like one line. Bismillah tawakkaltu ala Allahi wa la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Done. Protected. I would want protection. I think you do too. And for your children. These are things we should teach our children. Right? So the little things, when you're driving, when you leave the house, memorize. These are very short. But for the ones that you're going to probably read until you learn them, or maybe memorize them, are these three. Morning, evening, and before you sleep. Finally, the Quran. Have a connection with the Book of God. And this doesn't need to be like a juz a day, right? It can be an ayah. It can be a few ayahs, but something that you read, you reflect on, and you try to apply. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم إنه غفور رحيم سبحانك الله وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.